This is the Jabberjaw Podcast Network. Visit jabberjawmedia.com for more shows like this one.
Episode number 87 of That One Time on Tour is brought to you by the band 1MinuteRun. Ventura, California's very own 1MinuteRun is quickly invigorating the stale and predictable punk rock movement in Southern California. Since their inception in 2018, they've quickly become a local favorite, establishing themselves as one of punk rock's most dynamic and refreshing forces. The band's gruff and unrelenting wall of sound, combined with melodic aggression, is a fusion of high-energy musical riffs and unapologetic lyrics to create a unique and undeniably accessible sound. For more information on 1MinuteRun, you can check them out at oneminuterun.com or on all of the streaming services. Now here it is, their new single, 1440.
Hey, this is Tim Barry from the band Tim Barry, and I also am in the band Avail for as long as that lasts, and you're listening to That One Time on Tour.
Run for the road, 'cause it's going on and on. We'll be driving through the darkest night until the break of dawn. We'll be heading for the city, another show for us to play. Just get back in the band tomorrow. We'll do it all again.
What's up, everybody? It's 2020. This is the first episode of 2020. I would like to welcome you guys to my podcast, That One Time on Tour. As always, I am Chris Swinney, your illustrious host for this next hour to 2 hours or however long it is. This is my podcast where I get to sit down with somebody in or around the entertainment industry and have an awesome conversation. This week on the program, I got to sit down with Mr. Tim Barry from, as you heard at the beginning, from the band Tim Barry and the band Avail, as long as it still lasts or whatever he said. But man, I've been a huge Avail fan and a Tim Barry fan for a very long time. And I was so excited when I found out that he was going to come on the show. He doesn't do a lot of interviews, and it was an honor, man, to have him on the show. So before we get to that, and that is, this is the first episode number 87, first episode of 2020. The new year is here, and it couldn't be a better guest. I mean, we have so much fun talking about stuff. You guys are really going to enjoy it. And before we get into that, I still have to tell you about my sponsors. This week on the program, we had the band at the beginning, OneMinuteRun. Make sure to go check out their self-titled EP on all of the streaming services. OneMinuteRun is awesome, and I'd like to thank you very much for sponsoring the first episode of 2020, of the new decade. So, maybe we'll do like a compilation. Every band that sponsors an episode for the next 50 years at the beginning of each at the beginning of each decade. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know if I'll be doing this for 50 years. I don't think I'll still be alive, actually. If I was alive in 50 years, I would be, 91. I guess I might be able to do that. I need to start taking care of myself a little bit better if I'm going to make it to 91. But thank you, OneMinuteRun, for sponsoring this episode. If you guys would like to sponsor an episode, if you have a band or a company, you can hit me up. It's TOTOTpodcast@gmail.com. I also need to tell you about Permanence Tattoo Gallery. Jacob Harrison, my buddy and past guest of the show, owns Permanence Tattoo Gallery. It's in Anderson, Indiana, downtown on Meridian St. It's a wonderful tattoo shop, and you guys need to go get some work there. If you're local, head on over. If you are not, you need to come here and get some work. So shout out to Permanence Tattoo Gallery for being such a good sponsor. I can't wait to go back and get some more work done. Jacob actually tattooed the bottoms of my hands, put my kids' names on the side of my hand. I need to go back and get some more stuff. I'm going to start my stomach and my back soon. So, Jacob, if you're listening, let's collaborate, man. Let's get some stuff going. But shout out to Permanence Tattoo Gallery. They're on all the socials at Permanence Tattoo Gallery. So that is it for the sponsors. If you guys want to help out the show, you're not in a band, you don't have a company, but you're like, man, I really like what Chris does. I like the message. I like how much of a fanboy and geek he is when he talks to people, and it brightens my day. It brightens my commute, or when I'm sitting on the toilet, or wherever you guys listen to this podcast. If you like it and you want to get involved and you want to help out, head on over to patreon.com/TOTOT podcast. You can get involved at the $2 level, the $5 level, or the $25 level a month. And it helps us out. Quality and content of the podcast is important to me. And, it does cost some money to keep everything going. So if you want to help us out, that would be awesome. I do want to give a shout out to our 2 patron tier producers over on Patreon. I'd like to give a shout out to Bob Foster out of California and John Exton from the United Kingdom. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate the support, and I couldn't do it without you guys. So if you want to get involved, like I said, head on over patreon.com/TOTOT podcast. And if you want to help the show out, but you don't want to help us out financially, and I get that, man, times are tough. Money's not easy to come by. The best thing you can do is head on over to wherever you listen to this podcast, leave us a review. Leave us, preferably 5 stars would be awesome, but 4 stars is okay too. And, tell people about the show. Just let people know that you enjoy what I'm doing, and that way it'll spread and more people will find out. And 2020 can be the year of that one time on tour. So thank you guys very much for listening. I am going to keep this short and sweet. I have a radio segment this week, so cue the theme music.
Radio, radio, radio. Radio, radio, radio. When I've got the music, I've got the place to go. Radio, radio, radio. Radio, radio, radio. When I've got the music in me, I got a place to go.
On this edition of TOTOT Radio, I wanted to give a shout out to Australia. You guys are going through some really tough times right now with all the fires and everything that's going on down under. And we have a huge listener base in Australia. It's actually after the United States and I believe Canada. I think Australia and the UK is kind of tied. So we have, a lot of patrons from Australia. We have just a huge listener base from Australia. So I want to give a shout out to all you guys. I hope everything is going well. I actually have really good friends in Australia. Nancy, my old tour manager from when we toured in South Africa, and her son and her granddaughter, and just all these people, so many people in Australia. And, Lindsay from Friends of Ron that was on the show, and Josh from Paper Arms, and just so many people that I've met through the show and people that I knew before the show. Australia holds a special place in my heart. I love the country and I love the people. And I've never had anything but great experiences with Australia and anything that has to do with Australia. So shout out to everybody down there. I know people, it's kind of lame. Like, I'm sending thoughts and prayers, blah, blah, blah. But I'm thinking a lot about you guys, and I wish that there was more that I could do. I've donated. If you guys want to help, animals are dying and people's lives are being destroyed. And if you can go on, there's all kinds of GoFundMes, and there's all kinds of, like the Facebook donation pages and everything. If you guys can help out the people of Australia and the animals of Australia, donate whatever you can. I wish there was more that I could do, but maybe just spreading this and letting you guys know is a little bit that I can do that's more. But yeah, I love Australia and I love all my friends and all of my, peeps down there. And I hope you guys are well. And this radio segment, I've had a lot of people ask for this, but I'm going to go ahead and do it because it has to do with Australia. My good buddy, Josh Mann from Paper Arms, he was on the program a few months back. He was in a band back in the day called God So Loved the World. And I've had a lot of people since Josh was on the show wanting to kind of hear that and check it out. And Josh was kind enough to send me that stuff. And I really, really like it. Josh wanted me to let you guys know that, yes, they were a Christian band and that he was young and didn't know any better. I don't know if that's exactly what he told me to say, but yeah, it's really, really cool stuff. I think if you kind of like, in your face kind of hardcore punk, like if you liked Bane or if you liked Comeback Kid, like the old Comeback Kid stuff, or Stretch Armstrong or anything like that, I think you'd really dig it. So because we want everybody to continue to help and support and think about Australia, I wanted this radio segment to be about Australia. So Josh, who's in one of my favorite bands of all time, and I'll just go ahead and say it. And every time I tell him this, he gets all like flustered and doesn't believe me. But Paper Arms is one of my favorite bands of all time. But then I found out he was in this awesome hardcore band, God So Loved the World. So for this segment, I'm going to play one of my favorite songs by them. It's called American Holocaust. And with the current way stuff's going in America, this song might be prophetic. Who knows? But shout out to Josh and everybody in Australia. I love you guys. Please send me, social media messages or an email or whatever. Let me know that you're okay. If there's anything else that I can do or any of my listeners can do, let me know. And we're pulling for you guys, and we love you down under. So without further ado, this is Josh with God So Loved the World and their song, American Holocaust. So there it was, American Holocaust by God So Loved the World. Shout out to Josh Mann, ex-guest of the show and future guest of the show, for, sending me that awesome music. I really, really enjoy that. And I really, really love his other band, Paper Arms. And I want to say he has a solo record that he's currently working on. And as soon as it's finished, he's going to come back on the show so we can let you guys hear that as well. So once again, a shout out to all my people down in Australia. We love you, and we are sending positive vibes if that helps at all. I mean, at least know that we're thinking of you through this trying time. So stay strong. I would love to hear from you. Hit me up on the socials or email me, tototpodcast@gmail.com. I would really like it if you would call the hotline so I can actually hear your voice. Maybe I'll feature you next week. I just want to know, like, boots on the ground, like what's going on there in Australia. Because we see the videos, we hear the news stuff, but like what's going on if you're there? So you can call country code 1 since you're in Australia. I messed up. Country code 1. Area code 765-372-8818. Call the hotline. Let me know how you're doing. But much love and support and respect out to Australia. And just keep on keeping on, guys. We're pulling for you. So that's it for the intro. I'm going to get right into my conversation with Mr. Tim Barry from Avail. Man, I love Avail so much. They were one of those bands for me back in the day. They're so, so good. It's funny too, like we talk about how Avail played this show with the Ataris way before I was in the Ataris. It was when Chris was playing with a drum machine at the Emerson Theater in Indianapolis. And Tim's like, were you at that show? And I was like, yeah, I was at the show. I wasn't in the Ataris, but I was there. I remember seeing it. But we had such a great time, and he's such a funny, just like really cool guy with the way he thinks about stuff. And we're both fathers, so we talked a little bit about that. We talked about his songwriting process and everything. So I think you guys are really going to like it. So hit me up on the socials, leave me some reviews, leave me some love, and I will talk to you guys after the interview. So without further ado, this is my conversation with Mr. Tim Barry from Avail and his solo stuff. Here we go. And I'm on the phone with Mr. Tim Barry. How are you doing today, Tim?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing great. I'm freezing my ass off. I've got this little studio that I use to do my podcasting, and there's no heat, and it's about 15 degrees right now in Indiana where I'm at.
Well, you go ahead and get yourself a wood stove.
Yeah, right.
Cut some wood, put it in the wood stove, light a match, let the wood catch fire, and you'll be just fine.
Yeah, man. So you're out in Richmond, correct?
Yeah.
Has it gotten cold out there yet?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Every year they say this is the warmest, and then they say it's the coldest. It's December. It's 60 degrees.
Yeah.
And then, by Saturday it'll be 10. So who fucking knows? And then on New Year's Day it'll be 80.
Yeah.
That's just the nature of the Mid-Atlantic.
Well, I spent a lot of time living down in Gulf Shores, Alabama. I was down there for a job after I stopped touring, and man, it would be like 85 on Christmas Day, and then I moved back to Indiana, where I'm from originally, and I'm still not used to it, man.
Yeah, it's what it is. It's what it is.
So I'd like to welcome you to the show. I'm very excited to speak with you, being a huge fan of yours as well as Avail. I know that you just released your 6th studio album, The Roads to Richmond. I'd like to talk a little bit about that off the top of the show, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, that's cool.
So I know that you, what I was reading about the record is that, the title seems to fit kind of how it was written. A lot of the songs were written outside of Richmond, Virginia, where you're from, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason to it. Anybody who plays music knows you just write when it shows up.
Yeah.
And I've been spending a lot of time on the road, and I have 2 young daughters, and spend a lot of time with them all my time with them when I'm at home. And it's not always conducive to songwriting to have 2 kids climbing on your ass.
Dude, I feel you right there.
So I think I realized that many of the songs that were written on that new record were written out of town just because I had the opportunity to sit and really like work through things. But I don't write based on, I don't really come up with a concept. The songs just kind of pop out. What were you going to say? You got kids at home?
Oh yeah. I was just going to say, I totally understand because, You know, I used to be in a band called the Ataris. I was in a couple other bands as well. And I've recently been having some song ideas, and I've got my computer, and I've kind of, you know, it's not the old days. I can actually record stuff on my own. And I've been trying to write songs, and it's always at 3 o'clock in the morning because I have a 3-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter.
I know that feeling. I totally know that feeling. Ataris, man. So you remember that show that we did together at the Emerson Theater in Indianapolis, Indiana?
Well, I'll tell you, I was at that show, but at that point, I was just a friend of the band. I didn't join until like the mid 2000s. But yeah, I was there.
Are you the drummer?
I am not the drummer. I took over for John at guitar.
Because it's funny. That's like, it's very memorable because there was no drummer.
Oh yeah, because you played with them back when there was a drum machine. I was at that show.
It was a trip. It's like the Atari is always a great band, but that's like my weird. You know, you get those weird memories of a band, and it's like, you know, here's this band just killing it at this sold out show in front of 1,800 or 800 people, or 500, whatever Emerson Theater holds, and there's just no one up on the drum deck.
I know.
And it's a while ago, so that was weird.
It's crazy. It's crazy that now people play to tracks and stuff too. So Chris Rowe, the singer, was kind of ahead of his time by using a drum machine.
Yeah, no doubt. It's fucking cool, man. It's funny. Like, again, like nowadays, it's not really, that abnormal in multiple genres. It's a fairly common hustle. But back then it was really like, it seemed it was out of necessity. It's like, fuck, we want to play the show, but who the hell are we going to get to do drums confidently? And this shit's already written out on on these tracks that, for writing purposes. So let's just put that through the PA and the subs and fucking pound this shit out. It was great.
Well, it's fucking
killed it.
Well, it's funny. Like I've since left the band, but I'm still really close with Chris, and he was on Facebook the other day asking people if they knew where he could buy that original drum machine he used back in the day because he wanted to try to write songs with it again.
No shit. That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And smart as fuck, because, there's nothing better than going back to the origins of songs that sort of got you where you got.
Yeah. So when you said you write songs kind of out of necessity and you're doing it kind of wherever you can. I know this is kind of a loaded question, kind of weird, but like, does inspiration just strike? Is there a certain time that's better for you to write songs? Like, how does the process work for you?
There is no process. First, to clarify, I don't write songs out of necessity. They just, it's just a part of my life in a way that like walking is, or talking. But I can say, I was talking to one of the girls about it. Yes, the other day, my older daughter, who loves to write songs. I was like, Leela, you just wrote a song like in one take. And I was like, other song, and she was impatient about another song. I said, other songs will take years to write. And so I don't think I'm any different than anybody else, unless they're, some sort of genius where they can write something that they're comfortable making public, very quickly. But, I don't know much about my writing process. I do know, as I said, some songs come very quickly and some take many years. And some don't fit in a sequence. Like I like to only release full albums. So, if it's not going to work in the sequence, then I'm not going to bother with it, no matter how it was written. But I would rather not think about how I do something.
Just let it happen.
Too much, and just let it happen, because I've been writing songs since I was a child.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that any of those songs are good. And I don't have a fragile or frail ego. So I don't mind if you don't like them. And I respect you if you do or don't. It doesn't matter to me, because it's just me with the things that I'm concerned with. I don't know.
Yeah.
But so with all of that said, really, I think the main thing to consider is how I believe an album should be listened to. And I'll give you examples. Is the newest record. It's called The Roads to Richmond. People consider it very sad, very somber.
Yeah.
People approach me pretty consistently these days asking if I'm okay, like emotionally and things like that. And like the first and most important thing that people should always remember is that when someone writes songs in first person, that certainly doesn't mean it's actually about them.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing to always remember. There's a song on the record called Box Wine and Xanax, and it's a very intense song. I really drew the spirit of my favorite writer, which is Townes Van Zandt, into that song. But I don't do Xanax, and I fucking abhor box wine. So clearly that makes the song not about me to begin with.
Yeah.
But it's but the other thing that's important, well, first and foremost, is that I'm very happy. Don't worry about me, peoples. But the other thing is talking about not really the writing process, but there's songs on that record. I gotta grab it. There's songs on that fucking record that are so old that it's I don't, of course I don't have a copy of my own records. I really don't. Oh, here's one. I'll give you an example of where I'm concerned more about sequence.
Okay.
Is Birmingham, a song on that, was written when I was still in Avail.
Wow.
It was written for my first record called Ravenna Junction, and it didn't go on there. Do you know what I mean? So that's an example of like that song has been sitting around to wait for the right sequence of songs to get into.
So you just felt like it fit well with this batch of songs.
Yeah, and when I go in the studio to record, I go in with no plan. I have so many songs, and I just go in and go, oh, this is what I'm going to do today. There's a few things that my engineer and like co-producer Lance Kohler, who I've worked with for many years, he understands. It's like Tim's only going to sing this song live with no click track, and he's only going to give me 2 or at most 3 opportunities to record it.
Yeah.
And that's how I do. I go in, I think a song gets worse every time you play it. So I might play a song 2 or 3 times. And if it doesn't get recorded well, you'll probably never fucking hear it because I probably won't ever do it again. So I go in with that. And then at some point I'll look at my list of songs that's been recorded and I'll say, that's a good sequence.
Yeah.
I should get rid of these 3 songs, maybe record this or that, and that'll be a good sort of mood for a record in a sequence. And like that, this new record, The Roads to Richmond, is exactly that. There's songs that were written within, a week before recording it. There were songs that were written 15 years ago.
Wow. So you have like a plethora of songs kind of laying around that someday might fit on a record.
But they're laying around in my brain.
Okay, they're laying around in your brain.
Which is conflicting. I was on tour in Europe last year with some friends, and one of my peers and closest road friends was sort of like asking me about that process where I'm like, oh man, I have like 35 new songs right now. And he said, have you demoed them? And I was like, no, they're all in my head. And he was like, seriously, you need to put these down.
Yeah. Because
if you died on this tour, it would be really disappointing to a lot of people. And I never really think of music that way, that anyone would care. So, I
think a lot of people would care.
Well, when I was getting in for this new record, my idea was like to follow up on that conversation and go ahead and get these songs down, because I think I went in with 30 to 40 songs. Yeah. And I just stopped at some point, well before 30 to 40. I mean, I probably stopped at 10. How many songs are on the record? I don't even know. I probably stopped at 15. So,
well, I was reading also that you kind of changed things up this time in the studio, and you were doing 3-hour sessions once a week. Did being a father dictate that, or was that just a new thing you wanted to try?
I just do whatever I want.
Yeah.
In every aspect of my life, not just recording. And that's what I came up with that for this recording process. Who knows what I'll do next time, or if I'll even do it next time.
Yeah.
Actually, that's bullshit. I've been writing so many fucking songs. And my sister, I was playing, I do I curate a festival now in Richmond every year. It's called This November Fest. And when we were finishing up last month, my sister, who plays on stage with me and on records, Caitlin, she was like, when we finished one of the nights, she's like, we need to record live. And I said, we do. And she goes, and I think what she was saying, because I was drinking and kind of high from the show, you know what I mean? Like the adrenaline from that. When I realized that what she was saying, and I meant to follow up with her on this, is that she means like when we track in the studio to actually like invite people over.
Yeah.
To not, make a live recording, but to make, because there's like a different flow when someone's like when there's people participating in a live event, you play so much differently than the studio. Anyway, that's sort of like in my brain where I'm kind of going with recording another record is just fucking do 2 live sessions with 20 people there,
So you mentioned your first record, is it Ravana Junction? How do you say that?
We say Rivanna Junction.
Rivanna Junction. Now that came out in 2006. How was the transition from, Avail sort of starting to go away? I know on, what I read was Avail went away in 2007 or so before you guys came back. But how was that transition to doing the solo stuff? Had you always written songs for yourself that maybe, you didn't use for Avail?
Well, I don't know that there was a transition, because there was no intention.
Yeah.
I didn't wake up one day and say, I want to be a folk singer.
Yeah.
So I guess if that had become my goal or my intention, then I could talk about a transition. So what I guess I realized, I realized this much later, is that when Avail became fairly well known in the underground and the counterculture and the punk community, I realized that it was an accident.
Okay.
We had some sort of drive in us that is unprecedented for me to understand now, and it's certainly in a different era, because it's we didn't know any different, but it would be considered a much more difficult and almost scarier time to be doing what we were doing, like touring Europe, playing squats with no ability to contact home, or for anyone to even know that we were okay, or touring the United States incessantly and playing every town, playing Muncie, Indiana.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, in playing Muncie, Indiana in every fucking state. And I realized later, when my acoustic sort of music, when I realized one day that, like, wow, people are really coming to these shows and listening to this, and I didn't, it happened so slowly. They realized that there was it was like Avail all over again.
Yeah.
It was just it wasn't like we didn't set out to be, a name in the underground or counterculture. It just sort of happened. And the same thing happened with me after that. And I think one of the most interesting things if you could call it a transition, is a transition in the listener, where you'll notice that a lot of the people who helped me sell merch and tour with me were the first people to alert me to the idea that there was, hundreds of people coming to these shows, and many of them were coming to the merch table saying, I've never heard Tim's old band, or Tim is in a band, or, and that was an interesting sort of perspective to grapple with, is that these aren't Avail fans. Some of them, have grown with me and the music, but many of them aren't even interested in Avail and don't like Avail in the same way that I understand that Avail fans wouldn't really be interested in my music. So it's like, it's really neat. So that transition to me has been really important and really pretty exciting to think that, like, you can blaze your own way, whether you meant to or not. But to go to the root of the music, I would say that 60% of Avail songs were written on acoustic guitars and then transferred over to full band. And Avail wrote collaboratively.
Yeah.
There was primary songwriters, but in the end, it was a absolute collaboration. with really like a really interesting mix of different approaches, songs that were driven by the drums, songs that were driven by the acoustic guitar, songs that were driven by, there's just so many aspects to it. I love, but so as far as writing, like my input in writing Avail songs, it certainly, absolutely no, it wasn't hard, it wasn't difficult for me to to just sort of like go off on my own. I think the hardest thing for me is just I've always been a songwriter.
Yeah.
I've never been a good guitar player. and and it took me, I remember in 2008 I went on the first Revival tour, which is Ben Nichols, Chuck Reagan, myself, Jill Reagan. Chuck's wife was a team player and organizer, and there was a lot of really great people involved. That's where I learned to perform playing an acoustic guitar, because we did, I think, 58 shows in 59 days or something like that. And that was collaborative, and I had no choice. I had to play every night. So that was where I started really learning to play the guitar. And then, all these years later, I finally feel confident with the instrument. But so there's many transitions, but none of them really intentional.
I like what you were saying about kind of like the people that are coming to the shows, because I've often thought, Chuck Reagan from Hot Water and, Frank Turner and Ben Nichols from Lucero, like when you go out and do these solo gigs or kind of like, your own music, I'm sure that the crowd is going to change. Like I got into Lucero through the underground, through punk rock, but I know friends of mine that I met when I lived in Alabama that were completely pop country people that loved Lucero and didn't realize they came from that genre, they came from that, like, that scene. So it has to kind of almost be a mind fuck when you meet these people that have no idea you were in this seminal punk rock band, right?
Or, and even more interesting is that they don't like it.
Yeah.
So they listen, a friend of mine down in Georgia not long ago, she's like, it just doesn't, it's not you. And, I always believe that life is like a maze of phases. Like we go through different phases, and she's right. My friend from Georgia's right. Avail actually doesn't sound like me. It sounds like the phase that I was in that part of my life. And that's not to discredit it. That's not to dismiss it, because it was a life-saving phase for me and a lot of other people. But it doesn't sound like who I am now,
Yeah.
And I can see, like, Lucero is a fantastic example of like somebody who came up through that circuit that was paved by punk bands playing, going from basements to small venues and then finally becoming successful. And Lucero is a great example of like that crossover to sort of country music and mainstream.
Yeah.
Where I abhor the term folk punk. I think it's or campfire punk.
Yeah.
Even makes me feel like vomiting even harder, because really it's just folk music. In fact, punk is folk music, hip hop is folk music, and so is Woody Guthrie folk music. It's really just telling stories of the people, the streets, the jobs, the geographic locations. In punk is that, folk is that. So just call it all folk.
Did you always have kind of a love for that style of music? I mean, growing up when I was younger and I was into punk rock and metal and everything, but I always really liked Johnny Cash. I always liked storytellers. I might not have told all my punk rock friends back in the day, but I listened to it on the down low. Did you ever was that a new thing because it was just you and a guitar, or did you always have the love for that kind of music?
Well, I never listened to it on the down low. I turned that shit up to 11.
Yeah.
Because I've always been proud of that aspect of music and those roots. So to answer the question, yes, I've always been interested in that kind of music. And as a person who grew up going to a church where they played what I can only refer to as hippy dippy kumbaya Jesus Love music, which at the time I thought was silly, and now I realize was actually like incredibly rebellious. At that period. The church I went to, my mom and dad were in the sort of like choir and band and all that. In fact, my mom just wrote me this fantastic letter with the history of my 1968 Martin guitar that I play at home a lot. That was hers, and she played it in the church band. And I just going to be as brief as I can. The group at church played a banjo, an electric bass. I can only refer to it as a guitar army of people playing the acoustic guitars and singing sort of these folk songs, like religious folk songs.
Yeah.
Of course, I fucking hated it, and of course, I would go to church with my Venom shirt that said, "Look at me, Satan's child, born of evil, thus defiled."
Yeah.
And naturally, I rebelled against what my parents were into, not realizing what they were doing was so fucking rebellious. It's like weird when you get older and you think things through and you realize like the full circle. They were fucking punk as shit as far as like religious folks go.
Yeah.
They were punk as fuck.
Yeah, totally.
So I rebelled, and my rebellion was fucking metal. Just still the greatest shit ever. Should have heard my daughters listening to Rain and Blood the other day.
Oh, yeah.
It was fantastic. But and then punk and all that kind of stuff. So I really kind of got off the punk listening wagon early on in Avail, because we would tour for 5 weeks, come home for 3 weeks, go on tour for 5 weeks, come home for a day, go on tour. And the last thing I fucking want to do when I go home is listen to loud, abrasive music. And what I realized as I was only listening to folk music is that many of the melodies and the lyrics were what I had heard growing up going to this church, and that they were just changing a lot of the lyrics, like were a Guthrie song or Emily Lou song or something like that. And so it was like a form of comfort food. So, I mean, as far back as the early 90s, that's pretty much all I would listen to. I mean, not exclusively, but pretty much because it was relaxing to me. And then I realized what I love back then and what I really still love today about punk is live. I mean, the energy, the sort of like critical dynamics of the room, like everything about it is so spiritual. It's like, I'm always going to thrive to like go to punk shows, but at home I can't listen to it. It's just too much. But anyway, so that music is just has always been a big part of my life.
So with Avail getting back together here recently, I mean, you guys did a lot. You did Riot Fest, Muddy Roots, all these different things. How was that decision? How did that come about? Like, who kind of sparked the whole, hey, we should probably get back and start playing some gigs?
That's long and complicated. But I just say that I mean, to simplify it, I didn't want to have anything to do with doing Avail shows.
Okay.
And there was a couple like sort of conversations I had with some people that made it seem like it was a good idea, or at least it sort of planted the seed. And I should be clear that those decisions weren't made for financial reasons at all, but more. I don't know why. I mean, I don't even want to get into that. But I'm going to say that I listened to the record Over the James by Avail.
Yeah.
The year of the 20-year anniversary of it. And I hadn't listened to Avail in many years. As I said, I don't listen to a lot of, like loud music at home, especially. I'd say Sturgill Simpson's about as loud as I get.
He's great. He's great.
He's the fucking best. Tyler Childers is.
Oh yeah, he's great as well, man. Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Sturgill on Twitter is really funny too. If you ever follow him on Twitter,
I kind of just like my musicians to be musicians and not to. I don't know why they feel the need to be like Twitter stars and Instagram heroes too. So I actually don't follow any musicians that I love on social media because I don't want to give an example, but there's a musician, an Americana writer, who I think he's recognized as one of the greatest. And I go on his fucking Twitter and I'm just like, wow, you're doing a great job of running your music because you think that you have to be this fucking personality on here. Anyway, I listened to Over the James and I was kind of shocked by, this sounds cocky, but how good it sounded.
Yeah.
And how it stood the test of time. And I couldn't believe it. It was like Sunday. I'm cleaning the house. I smoked a little weed. I thought maybe it's the weed that made it sound good. And then so I listened again and it wasn't the weed. It's really like a good record. And that sort of was like, oh, wow, there's a backbone to this. You know, like I understand why people are interested. But at the same time, I've fought it because I'm like, why sing songs written 25 years ago when I can sing songs that I wrote today? Or I practice sort of a calm determination where I don't really have a goal, but I kind of finish something and then move to the next thing. And then I finish that and then I move to the next thing. And it's not filled with like sort of like a momentum or like, I don't know. I calmly move to the next thing. And I abhor this fucking Facebook nostalgia culture.
Yeah.
This fucking things were better before, because fuck that. Things are going to be better in a couple minutes and tomorrow and the next day. If you let them and you fucking get over it and realize that like a bunch of middle-aged men reuniting and trying to act 90s fucking punk is actually embarrassing.
Yeah.
I've seen it done over and over and over. And I don't want to be a part of that. So a lot of my resistance to even raising the flag and seeing if the Avail folks would be interested in doing shows was sort of my dislike for nostalgia culture. It's great to recognize and understand, you know, where you come from.
Yeah.
But listen, there's great bands out there that are new. And pulling up the old stuff sort of blinds you from the new. And all of these festivals are curated with these crappy Avails playing. You know, like it's just, how many of these fucking nostalgia bands can we get back together and offer a significant amount of money to play our fucking lame festival in a parking lot?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I'm very critical because I just don't fucking care. But the backbone, once again, was the music. And I really was, again, I was shocked. And I got to, just to dig into it, like, we talked, we came to consensus to do just like a couple, 3 shows type of thing. And it went, you know, I'd say it doubled what we had sort of like anticipated doing.
I mean, people were freaking out, man. I remember when you guys announced it on the internet, and I mean, all my friends freaked out. I know that like the shows were selling out. Were you kind of taken aback by the response?
Well, yes, and that's what I was going to get into with digging into it. Is like, so we have the backbone, which is the music, and then we have everybody on board who's, you know, consents to doing a certain amount of shows. And sort of like letting it play out and not really reforming the band, but just doing some shows and seeing what happens. Like not with like a big goal, not a big laid out plan. Although the music industry in that level, there has to be like a degree of, you know, like of layout for it. But so I knew that there was going to be a lot of hype to it. But I don't think that any of us were prepared for how much recognition Avail got. And you have to understand it from our perspective. This is a band that would roll into pretty much every show and do like a $1 bet with all of the bands playing, including staff, all the way from managers to dishwashers, to see who would bet on how many people would show up to the show. Because this is before the pre-sale era. Right. So, and I'm giving you this example to give you an idea of where the guys from Avail come from. in our heads. If you looked at those lists nightly to see who won, it was always the dishwasher or the bartender, because the guys in Avail in a 300 capacity club would bet 50 people would show up,
Yeah,
or
right.
20 or 90, right? We always lowballed. We always didn't think we were worth anything. We've made very little money. Like, it's ridiculous looking back on it that we like walked away from Avail with essentially absolutely nothing and no royalties. It's just, no record label did us wrong. We did ourselves wrong. We just did. We were idiots. Well, we pretended to be good with money, but we weren't. But so we walked. But that gives you an idea of like how the psyche of the guys are. And then so the tickets go on sale for the first show in Richmond. The venues, let's just say it's 1,200 capacity. It's somewhere right around there. I knew that was going to sell out. I knew it would sell out very quickly. I think the guys in the band knew it would sell out pretty quickly. And we had a hold on the venue for the next day. There was a lot of conflict within the band because the band didn't think we could sell out this 1,200 capacity venue 2 days in a row. And so we had holds on smaller venues around the city just in case, everything was going slower than we expected. And I think to recap really quick, the first show sold out in 10 seconds. And then this whole hysteria about robots buying the tickets came up, and that there was all this stuff. So we had management go through every single sale to see if there was any duplicate credit card sales. We had the program in which the sales are made to do the same thing. And then 2 promoters in Richmond manually went through all the sales too. And there was no double sales. The only double sales was one of the members of Avail who bought tickets twice because I think they were worried that they wouldn't have enough guest list spot for their friends and families. So there's the only duplicates. It was a member of Avail, which makes it fucking hilarious. But I think what happened with the algorithms on the internet with this debate that happened and people being angry at something, this internet hysteria is laughable how irrational it can be, because they had to blame robots for themselves not getting tickets.
Yeah.
And so they were wrong. But what happened is everybody was focused on this issue and then the reality that it's not robots. And I'm not sure if it was Avail that caused, it wasn't Avail itself. That could have happened to any band that reformed and sold out that quickly. So it wasn't specific to Avail. But what happened, so I was fishing that whole morning and had my phone off until like 11. And I finally get on with the manager and we make a decision to make the tickets. Well, when they're looking at the ticket sales, they weren't Virginians buying the tickets.
Yeah.
The show is in Richmond, Virginia. So there's a lot of disappointed Virginians. So we made the tickets available in person the next day. And I think that's like a really crucial aspect to this Avail sort of like getting together again, was now it becomes 1,500 to 2,000 people standing in line on a Saturday. And that's when the reunion begins. It's not the guys playing guitar or bass or singing or drums. It's about something that's bigger than that.
Yeah.
It's almost that the music becomes secondary. The mission is this gathering of friends or strangers who have something in common, and they all can't wait to see each other again. So I'm on my way to the studio with my daughters the day that those tickets go on sale, that Saturday. And we drive by the venue on the way, and I could not believe how many people are out there. And the girls are like, Daddy, let's go say hi. And we go out there, and I remember Larry Floyd, who's a buddy of ours from Richmond, was out there, and Sumi and Dana and Angela and so many of our friends, and they're all sitting in line. And Larry Floyd says, "Fuck the band," essentially, as a paraphrasing.
Yeah.
This is the reunion. And he's smiling ear to ear. And I look, and it's, 1,000 people just so stoked to see each other for the first time in many years. And so that's when I realized, wow, this is bigger than the music itself. And that made it very exciting. And then so as we start adding a couple shows, and I start hearing from people their perspectives of Avail, then it all starts to make sense. How we treat the turnout at a show as like, in our brain, it's just going to be a few people and they're not going to care. But what I realized is that we played every single little town.
Yeah.
We played Longview, Texas. We played the trailer park in Biloxi, Mississippi. We played every little teeny place to 50 people or 10 people or 500 people. And that was the first time that so many people had been introduced to this, not just music, but movement. And that accumulated over all of those years, and people held that close. So here I am contradicting myself by saying that the nostalgia culture that many of us are obsessed with actually is sort of a rite of passage and your own growth. So young people coming to a show that young people set up, where young people are playing music. This is the first time this has happened to many people. They held it close and they held it strong, and they all came out to those Avail shows. And it was certainly like a really fucking beautiful and amazing moment. It was a little overwhelming in many ways for, say, maybe, well, I can only speak for myself. It was a little too much for me to handle because I'm private. I don't even do interviews.
I was kind of amazed because like I work a lot with Vanessa over at Fat Records, and she hit me up and she's like, "Hey, do you want to talk to Tim?" I'm like, "Yeah, but I don't ever hear Tim talk to anybody."
I don't, but that's Vanessa. That's got a way of fucking with my brain. But yeah, I'm a private person, so like, I mean, those two shows. I mean, shit. I went and sound checked, came back, went, fishing, but it was too hot, and then went bottle digging, like looking for old bottles, and then went back and played, and then came home. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like right on stage, and I did that 2 nights in a row. But overwhelming, and I say that like where I'm naturally pretty sticking to myself. What I think was overwhelming for me is like I had like two things to deal with. Like, there are so many people that I love here. I'm either gonna like try to see all of them and like drain myself and not be able to sing, or I'm just gonna have to see nobody.
Yeah.
And I had to choose the
nobody.
Yeah. Where you can get someone like Bo, my bandmate Bo, where, man, he's got an infectious energy that I can't keep up with. And he might as well have been the meet or greet, man. Like, he stood out in the lobby and pretty much shook everyone's hand. He could probably run for mayor now.
Now, is Bo what they refer to on the Wikipedia page as the cheerleader? Did he just kind of danced around and like got the show hype? I remember seeing you guys and just thinking how cool that is, that, it seemed like he was just a good friend of yours that wanted to be a part of it, and he was kind of the Flavor Flav of Avail, if you know what I mean.
I don't think he likes that reference. I think me being Chuck D and Bo being Flav is fantastic, but I'm not sure that Bo likes that.
Well, I apologize to Bo if he listens.
Oh, he can handle it. He can't handle it now. You should have quit a long time ago.
Yeah, right.
I mean, talk about flogging a dead horse, man. Come on, we're talking about how Bo got in the band. But
why don't you tell me exactly how that kind of came about? That would be awesome to know.
Oh my God, dude. Are we seriously going back this far?
I mean, if we could, that would be great. My fans love deep dives.
Bo and I have been friends since kindergarten.
Okay.
And he, I don't know. I mean, I can't even think back this far in my brain. So I was the drummer in Avail for a while, and Bo would always sort of like sit next to me as my piece of shit Pearl Export drum set would fall apart while I was playing.
Yeah.
And I was also in a hardcore a thrash band before that called LDK. And then he sort of like helped out with that stuff. And then when I started singing, he just kind of came closer, you know what I mean? Like, came out on the deck instead of hiding in the back. And I think the theme of this entire interview is unintentional. Yeah, Bo never. We never. Bo was never like you're in the band or not in the band. He was just always there, and yeah. And then I guess naturally he became the hype man. I don't know. Like that certainly wasn't planned out. I don't know. I know that there's other bands that sort of have skanking people and things like that.
Like the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones has that guy that just dances, I think, right?
Yeah. I worked at the Richmond Ballet for a really long time, so we have different definitions of dancing.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a hype man. There's no doubt. Yeah, the Boss Tones are a great example. But yeah, I don't know. Bo, yeah. I mean, shit, we didn't hire Bo on to be the dancer, and he certainly didn't hire Avail on to dance to the music. So
I just always thought that was so cool that you guys like. I don't know. It was different, and I always like things that were a little bit different, you know.
Yep.
So I've had you on the phone for quite a while. I would like to know what the future holds. I know you just released this record in October. I'm sure you've got. I think I saw some dates coming up in the new year for you solo. You guys are doing punk rock bowling with Avail. What else does the future hold for the band and yourself?
I don't know. It's a good question. Man, this fucking era of music is bizarre. Where I have shows booked all the way until November of 2020.
It's crazy, right? You can like plan your whole life over your schedule.
It's not even, it's not even intentional. It's like because all these Peckerwoods are beating you to the dates. It's like you have to like compete for them now. Yeah. I'm talking about shows that I have scheduled for, as I said, November, and I'm like fourth hold on the venues. Meaning, and for those of you who don't understand this aspect of the business, fourth hold means that there's 3 other bands or acts or events ahead of my shows that we have to. It's called challenging. So now, say if I wanted to play your city of Boston, Massachusetts on a Saturday in November, I'm like 5th hold, and then I have to challenge the other holds in order to try to get that date. So anyway, for those of you who don't understand the booking world that we live in, that's sort of what's up with me. But anyway, I'm playing pretty much every other weekend the entire year. And those are solo shows, and those will be supporting the new record. And knowing me and knowing how fucking crazy I get, especially with how the writing frenzy I'm on, I wouldn't be surprised if I have another record out by the end of the year. And I hopefully every record that I have started like writing out for the last 4 records says new songs for last record. So hopefully this will be my last one, because it's just getting ridiculous at this point. But I don't really mean that, because I'll always make music. It doesn't mean I'll always share it publicly.
You heard it here first. Tim's going to retire.
God, well, I keep trying to break up, because if I break myself up, then you get really popular.
Yeah, right.
Look what happened with Avail. Avail broke up and it came back strong as a motherfucker. So right now I'm breaking up, and then the tours. Then I'll do my reunion tour starting in February.
Awesome. But just break up every year, and you'll just be the biggest artist in the world.
I'll get bigger and bigger, the Rolling Stones. And then Avail, I don't know. I didn't really even know about that punk rock bowling thing. So we are doing punk rock. I'm doing a shit ton of shows just domestically and in Canada, and then Avail only has punk rock bowling scheduled, and that's it. And I, of course, will do more than I say that I will. And then Avail, it's possible, will do more than that. But I think that people should note that there is no sort of like security in Avail's longevity. The idea is not to become a band again.
Yeah.
But to share sort of like, music for a little while and then sort of leave it at that. So I just need to make that clear. Like if you see Avail dates pop up here and there, come, because
could be the last
one. Come if it's special to you, because I don't see this going on for too long.
Now, speaking of, all that stuff, maybe it's not going to go on very long. Has there been any talks about possibly releasing any new material, or is this just totally getting together because of that vibe of like the Avail family?
Yeah, no, we're not writing songs.
Okay.
I mean, we could barely even find enough time to practice.
Yeah.
And that's not to discredit the quality of music. Like for when we got together to do those shows, Avail practiced 5 days a fucking week for like 3 months.
Yeah.
The band Iron Reagan secretly lent us their practice space, and we were over there every fucking morning. So yeah, no, but leave no, not right now. No, I don't see a Avail record in the future.
Well, I tell you what, man, I always ask my, at the end of the interview, and if you've got one, that's cool. I'm sure you've got one somewhere, but on this show, we like to talk about touring. I know we've touched on it a little bit. Is there anything that stands out in your mind, a funny or a scary story from being on the road, something you could share with my listeners? And I know that's like a really loaded question. It's hard.
Oh my God. No, absolutely not. I have no stories from tour ever. No.
Okay. Never.
No, no.
Did I hear it correctly? And this could just be totally out of left field. Did you do a tour one time where you actually like hopped on trains?
No.
Someone told me that.
These stories, my mom the other day was like, the people who like your music think you fall off of a boxcar with a guitar in your hand and like stumble on stage half drunk. And I was like, I know, isn't it a trip? And she's like, just let them believe that. But I'll give you a story.
Okay.
That has nothing to do with tour, but it has everything to do with the utter idiocy of stories and how they change and morph into things that are so incorrect that people believe that they're real. And I can tell all of y'all tour stories to the fucking second I die. We used to sit around a fire, drinking beer, swapping stories. And half the time I felt like I was just like one-upping people.
Yeah.
Because the stories that I have are nuts, dude. They're fucking nuts. The train stories are nuts. The fucking fist fighting stories are nuts. The fucking tour stories, the jail, the fucking beatdowns, like the craziest fucking shit you can ever fucking imagine. People who spend time on the road as long as I do are filled with these stories.
Yeah.
But half of them just become hyperbole and utter fucking bullshit. And you've told the stories and they've reshaped themselves so many times that they don't even have a solid foundation. It's just bullshit. And then it just becomes a story song. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
But the other day, Brent, who's a plumber here in Richmond, who's also the guitar player in Quar, was working on this big problem that I had with the dirty line coming out of my house. And he's got an excavator up, and his dad's out there. And he runs over to Bobby Joe Small and Patsy Small's house down the street, which is the guitar player who plays with me, Josh Small's parents. And Brent comes back after doing a quick job over there and goes, Bobby Joe told me a story about you. And I go, oh, yeah? And he goes, you know that Tim's famous, right, Brent? And Brent said, yeah, he's a well-known musician. And Bobby Joe goes, no, he rode a log down the James River. He's famous for climbing on top of a log and riding it like a horse down the James River, through Hollywood cemeteries, all the way down through Pipeline Rapids. He's telling this story, and Brent's sort of looking at me like, did you really do this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I go, I love that story. And he's kind of looking at me. I'm like, it's true. I've done it. So with that said, I can leave you with that story and you can figure out if it's true or not or utter fucking bullshit. But that's folklore. And that is Bobby Joe Small, who's probably close to 70, telling this story that's an urban legend of the things that I've done here in Richmond, Virginia. And so why bother telling y'all any of this fucking bullshit and any of these stories from the road? Because you should just go out there and make your own.
Dude, that's probably my favorite ending to one of my episodes ever. I gotta say, Tim, I've had so much fun talking to you today, man. And if you ever want to be a little more forthcoming with some stories, we'll have you back for a part 2. Okay.
That sounds good.
Awesome, man. Well, have a wonderful day. I know we had to do this interview a little bit early because you're picking up your girls. So I hope you guys have a wonderful holiday, and I will talk to you very soon.
Yeah. Hey, Merry Christmas. And I appreciate you rescheduling this because I can't do it with 2 kids climbing on me.
Oh, dude, I totally understand it. And I'd love to have you back in the future. And I hope you guys have a wonderful Christmas, and I'll talk to you later.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.
So there it was, my conversation with Mr. Tim Barry from Tim Barry's solo work and the band Avail. I had so much fun talking to Tim, and I cannot wait to have him back in the future when he releases new stuff or if there's new Avail news or whatever. His new record, Roads to Richmond, you have to check it out. It's on all the streaming sites. It's so good. He was talking about how, how he writes songs and how when he goes in to record them, if he doesn't get it in like a take or two, it's probably not going to see the light of day. And you can kind of feel that when you listen to the new record. There's like this urgency to almost every word he says and every note that he plays. Like it's really honest music, and I love it. I mean, I love Avail, but I've always been a huge fan of his solo work as well. So make sure you check out Roads to Richmond, the new Tim Barry solo record, and also go down the Avail rabbit hole. When I found out Tim was going to be on the show, I kind of did that. I hadn't, I've always been familiar with Avail, and I love Avail. I had all the records, but it had been a while since I kind of went, on that journey, that Avail journey. And I got to say, man, those records hold up. Like he was talking about when he heard, one of their records, and man, it sounded good. And he thought it was because he'd smoked some weed, but then he wasn't high anymore, and he listened again, and it was so good. It's because those records really do hold up. They're not dated at all. It's just like his solo stuff. It's very honest, kind of just in your face. Here's the music, no bullshit. So if you're not really familiar with Tim's solo stuff or with Avail, get Spotify, get Apple Music, go check it out. There's no reason not to. Hell, just go to YouTube. It's fucking free. But that's it for this week. I'm going to jump out of here, but I want to say, if you want to get in touch with me for anything at all, you can hit me up on the socials at TOTOT Podcast, or you can email me, tototpodcast@gmail.com. There is also the option for leaving me a voicemail. Maybe you'll get featured on the program. You can call the hotline. It is 765-372-8818. I would like to give another shout out to all my friends in Australia. I love you. I'm pulling for you. And let me know you're doing okay. Shoot me some messages, leave me a voicemail, whatever. I just want to know that everybody is doing well, and I will hopefully hear from you soon. And like I said, thanks for the support. Australia has one of our biggest listener bases of any country in the world. So I know a lot of you out there listening are in Australia. I just want to make sure you're safe. So let me know. I love you guys. I'm going to get out of here. It's super late. This is the first episode of 2020. Pretty excited. I've got some amazing guests coming up next week on the program, as long as I don't mess up and delete it like I did a long time ago with one of the other episodes. I've got Adam Davis from Link 80 is going to be on the program next week. Link 80, awesome kind of hardcore punk ska band from back in the day. They were on Asian Man Records. Loved Link 80. They did a Metallica cover, which is awesome. We talk about that during the podcast. Of course, because of Metallica's involved, I have to talk about it. But that's next week, so come back for that. Mr. Adam Davis from Link 80. He also has a new band called Omnigon, which is so good. You have to check that out. They're on all the streaming sites, and you can check it out. So you're prepared for next week. But I'm going to get out of here, but not before I play some music. I'm going to hit you guys with Big Ships, which is a solo song off of Tim's new record, Roads to Richmond. And then after that, I'm going to follow it up with an Avail classic, Simple Song. So I hope you guys enjoy this music and support Tim. He's a hardworking guy, and he is one of my favorite songwriters of all time. So check him out. If you don't know what's up with Tim, go find out. But this is Chris. Welcome to 2020. Happy New Year. Thank you so much for the support. This is the year of that one time on tour. We're going to take over, man. Now we've got some really, really good guests. I've got guests planned all the way through episode 100, which is pretty crazy to think that it's triple digits. We're coming up on triple digits. So if you guys need anything from me, you know how to get a hold of me, and I'm going to jump out of here. So here it is. I'm going to play a little Tim Barry from his new Roads to Richmond record, and then some Avail, some classic Avail. But this is Chris. I'm going to sleep. Love you guys. Peace.
Someone told me if I be lonely, you'll be at peace by now. On head or heel, alive or dead, or just getting by somehow. Got a backup full of curing wood and change for dollar bills, and habits that ain't fit for no living man to sell. Been everywhere just barely, and always give my best. And I'll keep your secrets until I'm 3 sheets to the wind. A lonely road I have walked, and walked it nonetheless. The biggest ships turn slowly, some are made to drift. Big ships turn slow, stop and take a rest. Let the others pass by, some are made to drift. La, 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 hey, hey, hey. I'm just trying to float through another day. This silence is beautiful, and where I like it best. Here your greatest enemy could one day be your friend. Got a window full of plastic flowers, a chair and a desk, and hold the weight of giving in to expectation. Yeah, I could ride back somehow and say it's okay, but I'm better at turning off for days and days and days. And it ain't the years that aged me, it's the miles on this sea. And there ain't no one to blame but me. Big ships turn slow, stop and take a rest. Let the others pass by, some are made to drift. La, 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 hey, hey, hey. I'm just trying to get through another day, and there ain't no one to blame but me. There ain't no one to blame but me. There ain't no one to blame but me.
Hey guys, it's Alice Lenny. And I see you. That's what I turn.
This is the Jabberjaw Podcast Network.